Reverend Rhona's life work is encouraging others to have more fulfilling relationships. Today, she will show us how to live in a way that puts the golden rule to work. Remember that one? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. As we prepare for Reverend Rhona's meditation, let's direct our focus inward as we listen to Daniel Nahmod sing Sacred Love.
You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love, God, sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love, sacred love is all that you are. You are sacred love, God, sacred love is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. I want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. I want to live in such a holy place, such a holy place. You are blessed peace, blessed peace is all that you are. You are blessed peace, God, blessed peace is all that you are. Show the way, God, show the way. I want to live in such a state of grace. Lead the way, God, lead the way. I want to live in such a holy place, such a holy place. You are deepest joy, deepest joy is all that you are. You are deepest joy, God.
As we prepare ourselves to hear today's message, I invite you to find a seat and to take some time just to rest. If it is safe and comfortable for you, I invite you to close your eyes and become aware of my voice as you take a breath and begin to relax. As you rest in your seat, become aware of your breath as it breathes in and then as it releases from your body. And with each successive breath, become aware of the tension and allow it to leave your body. Release. Let go. Let the chair support you so your body does no work at all. And as you hear these words, I invite you to hear them as if you are speaking. I am now immersed in the comfort of love. I feel this love saturating my mind and my body. And I feel great comfort because I know this energy of love, the energy of God, is with me always, all times, all situations. And from this thought alone, I am comforted. I feel safe and peaceful. My mind is still and at ease. The spirit of love is flowing through me now, and I can feel security and contentment washing over me. Serenity wells up from my innermost self. Peace is flooding my mind and my body. And I realize that I am one with wisdom, with strength, with faith, with love, with peace. With every heartbeat, I become aware that the presence of peace, the presence of love and wisdom and strength and faith, those are with me always. I am never alone. Peace and love and contentment and wisdom are but a breath away. My mind is poised and my heart is serene. And as I bring myself back to this present moment, I know that peace and love are always with me, are always just a breath away. And for this knowledge, I am grateful. Amen. A few years ago, Walt and I had the opportunity to join the Youth of Unity, also known as YOU, at their summer campout in eastern Washington state. I was part of a small group, what we call family groups, and we basically remained with our family group for the entire weekend. And one of the first things that we did as part of our family group was to decide how we would be with each other. and we decided to make agreements called heart agreements about how we would behave and about how we would show up for each other and with each other. We all had input into what those behaviors would be, and then we all agreed to abide by those agreements, and we each signed a poster where these agreements had been written. And part of the reason for doing this was so that if somebody for some reason violated the agreement or broke the agreement, then we had a gentle way to remind one another about what we had agreed to. So it didn't have to be something that was personal. It could be something that was quite gently reminded if somebody was doing something that wasn't what we had agreed to. And so in effect, we created a relationship framework for each participant to abide by. And as an observer and a participant, it was a powerful experience for me to see how these teens connected with each other and how deeply and authentically they shared with each other, and how liberating it appeared to be for them to be able to explore in a place that was completely safe. And it wasn't until the very last day that I had this aha moment, and that was, if we are having agreements that are for a small group that create safety and create a place for each person to be heard, guidelines and principles for how we choose to behave, then surely we could do that in our everyday relationships with our families, with our siblings, with our children, with our spouses, with the people in our workplaces even. A code of conduct, if you will, that we work together to create, and then to remind each other gently when we fail at holding ourselves to that code of conduct. So I had this aha about the fact that what these agreements were, what we called heart agreements at camp, is really a way of taking the golden rule, which is do unto others as you would have them do unto you, and putting some practical guidelines around what that means. And that was really the effect of having these heart agreements. And what happens was every person is honored right where they are. Every person is able and free to express exactly what they're going through. And there is no judgment. There is no fixing. There is no wondering if you should have done it differently. It created a place that was powerfully safe. And the effect was unconditional acceptance. It created this space that Carl Rogers, the psychologist, might call unconditional positive regard, and what I call love, unconditional love. This secret to connection one with another is indeed the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have done to you. And here are some of the ideas that might help to put some teeth, to put some practical ideas to those words. What does it look like? Well, we go into these agreements. But first, consider what would happen if you don't have them. if you aren't in a place where you feel safe, then what will happen is people will check out. Sometimes physically, they might literally leave the relationship, the building, the room, or they may emotionally leave and shut down completely. They may feel that they aren't safe, that they aren't valued, that they aren't valuable. And none of those things fit with how we want to treat the people we care about, the people we love, the people that we want to be in relationship with. And so here are the specific behaviors, with permission from my group, about what we decided were our family heart agreements. The first one was Vegas rules. That is, what happens here stays here. What happens here stays here. There will be no sharing of private information outside of that family group unless what is heard is going to pose a risk either to the person or to somebody else. But outside of that, there is no gossip, there is no triangulation, there is no going behind somebody's back to share some information that you may have learned about the other person. And so, as a result, there is no risk of judgment by somebody outside of your family group. And therefore, it is safe to explore, because you know that what is said in your room, what is said in private, remains in private. It prevents what is known as reputation theft, where one person could tell another person and tell another person about something that may or may not have happened. It takes away all of that. So, rule number one, what happens here stays here. And if you ever find yourself in a place where that is difficult for you, so perhaps someone is sharing information with you about someone, it's perfectly wise to set your own boundary and to say something like, I'm sorry, I'm not comfortable speaking about that other person without that person being here. Basically, it's the idea of nothing about me unless I'm there. Nothing about me without me. Also, it's a reminder that if someone is willing to gossip to you, they are very likely to be willing to gossip about you. So, rule number one, Vegas rules. We honor each other's privacy. The second guideline that we came up with is what we called the no Gandalf rule. Now, if you are familiar at all with Lord of the Rings, the no Gandalf rule is that Gandalf always used to say, you may not pass. You may not pass. And this is the exact opposite. It is that it is okay to pass. That if we take the Lord's Prayer literally, and we say, forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us, we recognize that we do not want to do anything where we trespass into somebody else's business. And we force people to do things that they don't want to do. That is trespassing. So when we say the no Gandalf rule, that it is okay to pass, we respect each person's boundaries. There's no judgment, there's no forcing, there's no coercion, there's no peer pressure. And when we have less peer pressure, we have less anxiety. And when we have less anxiety, we have more ability to have clarity of thought. And so it is only wise to not have this pressure of needing to participate if it doesn't feel safe. How we did this around our circle is that we had a little bunny that we passed around, and we went around the circle twice. So a person may not have been ready to share something the first time around the circle and may say, I pass. But by the time they came around the second time, they may be more ready to share or not. We honor each person's right to be right where they are. And that includes the right to not participate if it doesn't feel comfortable or safe for them. And it reminded me about where in our relationships do we insist that people follow the crowd, or where do we insist that somebody say something or do something? The right to pass. No Gandalf. The next that we came up with was to respect the space. And this had two parts. The first was the physical space. So we committed as a group that we would leave the place physically as clean as we found it. And so again, it became a gentle reminder for people that if they left their candy wrappers on the ground, and trust me, the Youth of Unity love their candy, that they would pick up anything that they left behind. So the room, when we came back into it, was pristine and pretty. And when we left at the end of the weekend, we ensured that it was even better than when we first arrived. And then the other part was respecting the space emotionally. These were a bunch of students, and this was in the summer of 2018. Everybody at that point was attached to their cell phones, but not at that camp. They made the decision to put their cell phones away for the entire weekend. Can you imagine that? And even doing that meant that they were more present for each other. And then on top of that, they agreed that they would listen. Not just listen because they wanted to talk and were kind of waiting for the pause, but truly listening. And we came up with a signal. So if for some reason that it felt like somebody was not being listened to, or there was maybe some chatter going on, we would just hold 2 fingers up. And it was just a silent reminder to everyone to lower their voices and to pay attention and to become present for the person speaking. It was a way to ensure either that we weren't interrupting, or a way to ensure that we weren't monopolizing somebody else's speech, monopolizing a conversation, or interrupting somebody else's speech. The next agreement we came up with was straight talk. Straight talk, no crosstalk. What that alludes to is the idea that one person speaks at a time, and that we hold the space for that person to speak for as long as they need to, and everybody gets an equal chance to speak. And I mentioned that we had a plush bunny. Well, we passed that bunny around, and it became the equivalent of like a talking stick. And only the person who held the bunny spoke, and everybody else was quiet and listened. No interruptions. In doing so, every person had the opportunity to be heard. Every person had the opportunity to speak. And having something soft like a bunny actually provided some comfort, because some of what the teens spoke about was difficult and challenging. And I think having something soft like that to look at as they were speaking actually provided some space and some comfort for them. So you might consider that if you have a family and you just pass that bunny around and it becomes the equivalent of your talking stick. The next one was what I call no put downs, but what they call don't yuck my yum. Don't yuck my yum. And basically what it means is don't ruin somebody else's positive experience with your own negative comment. Don't make fun of them. Don't sneer because maybe you don't like the same things that they do. It's an invitation to allow for different points of view, to accept every person right where they are in this intentional relationship setting that we created. And then the next one was you're welcome. This also had two parts. The first part was you're welcome just the way you are. There will be no fixing, there will be no shoulds, there will be no suggesting, there will be no advice. This is just a space for you to speak. There will be no correcting, no criticism, no complaint. When the students first came to the camp, they were invited to introduce themselves by their name, the place that they were from, and their preferred pronoun, immediately creating an atmosphere of safety, immediately creating a place of safety. And then the next part was, you're welcome, the manners of it. My mom always says, manners maketh man. And so what she was talking about there is to do please, to say thank you, to say you're welcome, to treat each other with the human respect of manners, to show up on time, to end on time, to be polite with each other. And then the next rule was the tilapia rule. Now, if you are familiar at all with tilapia, tilapia is a fish. And the idea of the tilapia rule is to go with the flow, to remain flexible, to have an open mind, to recognize that sometimes things are simply not going to go your way, and or not go as planned even, and to be okay with that, to be flexible, to be fluid, to recognize that if something pops up for you, that you might want to allow it to pop up rather than resisting it. The idea of going with the flow, going with the flow. What came to me when I was thinking of that is the idea of going with the flow sometimes means just saying yes instead of resisting. Just say yes. And then the very final agreement that we had was called family fuzzies. These are also known as hugs. And they have a very special way of doing hugs, which is heart to heart. So instead of the body being face on with the other person, it's actually shifted over so that one person's heart is touching another person's heart. And then they breathe for 3 breaths. And then they squeeze each other's shoulders. There's nothing perfunctory about it. There's nothing casual about it. It is a very intentional experience. And because you last for 3 breaths, it is actually very, very calming. And we remember the Gandalf rule, which is, or the no Gandalf rule, which is, yes, you are allowed to pass. And so if somebody isn't comfortable with hugging, then that's okay too. Putting hands out or fist bumps, or these days with the pandemic, the elbow is most familiar to us now in a way that it wasn't even those couple of years ago. And so these were the agreements that we came up with. These agreements that made a difference to how we behaved. And my contention is that these agreements, or something like them, can make a huge difference in our everyday lives, even if we only implement 1 or 2 of them. My suggestion is that you take them and use them as a discussion framework for your own family. Your own family, your own relationships, your own marriage perhaps, or relationship with your children or your spouse. It could be so much fun to do this with your family, with your grandchildren. So here are the rules again. The first was, do unto others as you would have done to you. Vegas rules. Privacy. What happens here stays here. The next rule is the no Gandalf rule. That is, you are free to pass. The next is respect the space, both the physical space and being present to each person so that they know that people aren't ignoring them while they're speaking. So respecting the emotional space. And then don't yuck my yums. No put downs for yourself, no put downs for other people. And then straight talk. No crosstalk. Allowing every person the opportunity to speak. And then you're welcome. You're welcome just the way you are. No fixing needed. And no welcome. We treat each other with manners. And then finally, almost finally, sorry, one before finally, is the tilapia rule. Go with the flow. Be prepared to flow with whatever may be unexpected. Be prepared to say yes if an opportunity presents itself, even though it wasn't planned. Allow some spontaneity and go with the flow. And finally, family fuzzies. Have meaningful hugs. What Charlotte Diamond used to say was 4 hugs a day, that's the minimum, in her song. She was a children's entertainer. So here are those ideas for your consideration. Are any of them ideas that you might be able to implement in your own families? Are any of them ideas that you find yourself resonating with? It was fun. It was creative, and it was a gentle way of reminding everybody about who we are, how we want to treat each other, and how we want to be treated. It truly was a way to take the golden rule and put actions to the words. Heart agreements are not just for class, and they are not just for camp. Heart agreements. Consider them for your every relationship. I bless you.
Gladly walk across the desert with no shoes upon my feet to share with you the last bite of bread I had to eat. I would swim out to save you in your sea of broken dreams. When your hopes are sinking, let me show you what love means. Love can build a bridge between your heart and mine. Love can build a bridge. Don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's time? I would whisper love so loudly every heart could understand. And love and only love can join the trials of man. I would give my heart's desire so that you might see. First step is to realize that it all begins with you and me. Love can build a bridge between your heart and mine. Love can build a bridge. Don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's time? When we stand together, it's our finest hour. We can do anything, anything, if we can believe in the power. Love can build a bridge between your heart and mine. Love can build a bridge. Don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's time? One more time. Love can build a bridge between your heart and mine. Love can build a bridge. Don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's time? Don't you think it's time?
Thank you, Delaney. And it is time, no question. So thank you, Delaney, for your beautiful, heartfelt songs. And Rhona, thank you so much for your comforting and enlightening message. We've got a lot to think about and play with this week.